You're going to love this, my brother Brandon said, raising his champagne glass like he was the king of Napa Valley. I bought Mom and Dad an anniversary gift, a luxury lakeside cabin. Everyone at the table clapped. My mother gasped. My father beamed. His wife looked smug. And I froze. Where did you get $110,000? I asked, my fork still hovering midair. He smirked. You're the big shot forensic accountant, right? High salary and all that. I figured you could afford it. Then he laughed like it was a joke. A party trick. You what? I whispered. But the blood drained from my face. I took out the loan in your name, he said casually, like he was telling me he borrowed a sweater. You'll pay it off quick. You're single. Don't be selfish. My hand was shaking. The table had gone silent. Then he added with a grin. It's already approved. Happy anniversary. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't flip the table. I didn't throw my wine in Brandon's smug face. I knew exactly what that would look like. The jealous, hysterical sister ruining the golden boy's moment. I've spent 29 years learning that in this family, optics are the only currency that matters. So I swallowed the scream building in my throat and stood up. I walked over to my parents, placed a hand on my father's shoulder, and whispered, "Outside. Now." My mother, Stacy, smiled tightly at the guests, her eyes promising retribution for this interruption, and followed us to the vineyard terrace. The moment the glass doors slid shut, cutting off the applause and the jazz music, her smile vanished. "Rowan, what is wrong with you?" she hissed, smoothing the front of her sequined gown. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Go back inside and congratulate your brother." "Congratulate him?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "He just admitted to grand larceny. He took out a 6-figure loan in my name, Mom. Without my consent. That is a federal crime." My father, Richard, sighed, the sound of a man inconvenienced by details. He leaned against the stone railing, swirling his scotch. "He didn't steal it, Rowan. He borrowed your credit standing. There's a difference. Brandon wants us to have a legacy. A place to gather the family. He knew he wouldn't qualify on his own. So he improvised. He was trying to do something nice for us." I stared at them, and the world tilted on its axis. They weren't shocked. They weren't confused. They knew. "You knew?" I asked, the words tasting like ash. "You knew he was forging my signature?" "We knew he was handling the financing," my mother said, waving a hand dismissively. "We didn't ask for the boring particulars. And honestly, Rowan, why are you making this about you? You're a partner at your firm. You have no husband, no children, no expenses. You sit in that apartment with all that money and do nothing with it. Brandon has a wife. He has an image to maintain. He needed a win." There it was. The family ledger, laid bare in the moonlight. In their eyes, my success wasn't an achievement. It was a resource pool for Brandon to dip into whenever his own mediocrity ran dry. I wasn't their daughter. I was their insurance policy. "So I'm supposed to just pay it?" I asked, needing to hear them say it. "I'm supposed to pay $110,000 for a cabin I didn't buy, so Brandon can look like a hero? You can afford it," my father said, his voice hard. "Don't be selfish. It's our 40th anniversary. Do not ruin the mood with your penny pinching. Just sign whatever papers he needs you to sign, and let him have this." I looked at my mother. She was already checking her reflection in the glass door, making sure her hair was perfect for the photos. She didn't see a crime. She saw a vacation home. She didn't see a daughter being exploited. She saw a problem that needed to be quiet. For years, I had thought I was fighting for their approval. I thought if I just achieved enough, earned enough, became enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at him. But standing on that terrace, the cold night air biting through my dress, I realized the truth. I had never been fighting for their love. I had been auditioning for the role of financier, and I had just got the part. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't try to explain the concept of debt-to-income ratios or the prison sentences attached to wire fraud. Logic holds no power over people who have decided that their desires define reality. I understand, I said. And I did. I understood perfectly. Good, my mother said, opening the door. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses rushed back out, loud and oblivious. Fix your face, Rowan. We're cutting the cake. She walked back into the warmth of the party, confident that she had managed me, just like she always did. My father followed, clapping a hand on Brandon's back as he re-entered the room. I stood alone on the terrace for a moment, watching them through the glass. They looked like a perfect family, happy, wealthy, united. But I knew what lay beneath the foundation of that image. It was built on my credit score, my silence, and my labor. I turned away from the door. I didn't go back inside for cake. I walked to the valet stand, retrieved my car, and drove into the darkness. They thought the conversation was over. They thought I had folded. But they forgot what I do for a living. I don't just look at the numbers, I hunt them down. And tomorrow morning, the audit would begin. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of the engine and the cold clarity settling over me like a frost. Most people, when faced with a betrayal of this magnitude, would go home and collapse. They would call a friend and sob into the phone until their throat was raw. They would try to make sense of the emotional wreckage. But I am not most people. I am a forensic accountant. I spend my days tracking down embezzlement in Fortune 500 companies and finding the hidden assets in high-stakes divorces. I don't process trauma with tissues. I process it with spreadsheets. I walked into my apartment, kicked off my heels, and didn't even turn on the overhead lights. I went straight to my home office, the glow of my 3 monitors waking up like a digital sunrise. I sat down, cracked my knuckles, and logged into my secure server. Emotion is just bad data in an audit. It clouds the findings, so I deleted it. I deleted the hurt daughter. I deleted the overlooked sister. I became the auditor. I started with the credit bureaus. Experian first. 2-factor authentication code sent. Access granted. I pulled my full report, scrolling past my student loans, my impeccably paid credit cards, my own mortgage. And there it was. A hard inquiry from 3 weeks ago. A new installment loan opened 4 days ago. Lender, Horizon Capital. Principal amount, $110,000. Term, 15 years. Interest rate, astronomical. I clicked on the details. The loan application had been submitted online. I pulled the digital copy. It was a masterpiece of fraud. My social security number was correct. My current address was correct. My employment history, salary, and assets were all accurate down to the cent. But the signature at the bottom? It was a good forgery, confident and sweeping. But the loop on the R in Rowan was too wide. It was Brandon's handwriting trying to wear my skin. I stared at that signature, and for a second, the cold professionalism wavered. For years, I had told myself that keeping the peace was a virtue. It is a lie we tell ourselves to survive. I thought about the time I was 22, and Brandon stole my emergency cash to pay a gambling debt. My mother had begged me not to tell Dad, promising Brandon would pay it back. He never did. I thought about the time he used my AAA card to tow his car 3 states away, maxing out my benefits. I thought about the thousands of dollars in loans that became gifts because asking for repayment made me the villain. It wasn't just money. It was an invisible chain I had been wearing since I was a child, the chain of the survivor. The rule was simple: Brandon makes the mess, and Rowan cleans it up. If I stayed silent, I was a good sister. If I spoke up, I was the problem. I had spent my entire life paying a tax just to exist in my own family. I had let them condition me to believe that my silence was the price of admission. But looking at that forged signature, realizing he had committed a federal crime just so he could look successful at a party, I felt the chain snap. It didn't break with a bang, it broke with a click. I downloaded the full loan packet. Then, I went deeper. I pulled my bank statements to check for verification deposits. I pulled my tax transcripts to see if there had been any unauthorized access requests. I built a timeline. October 4th, credit inquiry. October 10th, loan application submitted. October 15th. Employment verification forged. I recognized the email address used for the verification. It was a domain Brandon had bought 2 years ago for a business idea that never launched. He had impersonated my HR department. I printed everything. The whir of the laser printer was the only sound in the apartment, page after page of evidence sliding into the tray. I wasn't building a family photo album anymore. I was building a case file. I opened a fresh manila folder and labeled it simply, fraud. I placed the stack of papers inside. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Brandon. I opened my contacts and scrolled to the number for the fraud department at Horizon Capital. It was 2 in the morning, but their automated line would let me flag the account immediately. I dialed. The voice on the other end was robotic, asking for my social security number. I punched it in. I flagged the loan as identity theft. I put a freeze on all 3 of my credit reports. I locked down every asset I owned. When I finally set the phone down, the sun was starting to creep through the blinds. I hadn't slept, but I wasn't tired. I felt light. The burden of being their safety net was gone. I walked to the window and looked out at the city waking up. They thought they had trapped me in another debt. They thought I would pay this off quietly to protect the family name. But they forgot one thing. An audit doesn't care about feelings. An audit only cares about the truth. And I was about to deliver the most devastating report of my life. I didn't stop at the credit report. A loan application is a digital footprint, and footprints always lead back to the shoe that made them. I needed to know the mechanics of the theft. Brandon is lazy. He's the kind of guy who pays someone to write his resume and then forgets to change the contact info. He didn't pull this off alone. He didn't have the sophistication to hack my digital life. And he didn't have the patience to forge tax returns from scratch. I opened the metadata of the uploaded documents in the loan packet. Every file tells a story. The PDF of my tax return wasn't a digital download from the IRS. It was a scan. I checked the device ID encoded in the file header. Epson Workforce Pro. Serial number ending in 492. I froze. I knew that printer. I bought it for my parents 3 Christmases ago. I checked the IP address of the submission. It wasn't a VPN. It wasn't a coffee shop. It was the static residential IP assigned to my parents' router in Napa. Brandon hadn't stolen my identity in a back alley. He had done it from my parents' home office. But there was a missing variable. The documents he used, my original social security card and my birth certificate, were physical copies. I kept my current passport in my safe, but the originals from my childhood were locked in a fireproof Sentry safe in my father's study. I don't have the combination to that safe. Brandon doesn't have the combination to that safe. Only 2 people do. I zoomed in on the scan of the social security card. In the corner of the image, just barely visible against the glass of the scanner, was a manicured thumb with a French tip. My stomach turned over, heavy and cold. It wasn't Brandon's thumb. It was Stacy's. My mother. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the wind out of my lungs. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just looking the other way. My mother had walked into that study, dialed in the combination, removed my identity documents, and held them down on the glass while Brandon hit scan. She hadn't just opened the door for the burglar, she had driven the getaway car. I leaned back in my chair, staring at that sliver of a fingernail on the screen. For a moment, the hurt tried to surface, the little girl inside me asking why her mommy would sell her out. But I engaged the override. I forced myself to look at this through the lens of behavioral psychology, a subject I studied to understand fraudsters. This is the trap of normalizing cruelty. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens by slowly eroding the boundaries of acceptable behavior until the unthinkable becomes routine. My parents had spent 30 years warping Brandon's reality. They had removed the word no from his vocabulary so thoroughly that his brain literally couldn't process it. To him, my money wasn't my property. It was a family resource he hadn't accessed yet. And to my mother? I wasn't a person with rights, I was an asset class. In her mind, she wasn't committing a felony. She was facilitating a solution. She probably told herself she was helping me be generous, correcting my selfishness for me. She viewed my autonomy as a defect she needed to fix. She didn't see a crime, She saw a reallocation of funds to the preferred shareholder. It was a conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy involving wire fraud, identity theft, and forgery, orchestrated by the people who were supposed to protect me. I saved the image of the thumb. I highlighted the metadata connecting the device to their home. I added it to the folder. The investigation was complete. I had the who, the how, and the where. The why didn't matter anymore. Motive is for juries. I just needed the evidence for the execution. I closed the file. My mother wasn't a parent anymore. She was a co-conspirator. And she was about to learn that in the eyes of the law, accomplices go down just as hard as the mastermind. Tuesday morning. I was at my desk, reviewing the forensic audit of a shell company used to launder money for a tech startup, when my receptionist buzzed. She sounded apologetic. "Your brother is here, Rowan. He says it's urgent family business." I told her to send him back. I didn't clear my desk. I didn't hide the files. I wanted him to see me in my element, surrounded by the evidence of my competence. Brandon walked in wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, flashing that winning smile that had gotten him out of every speeding ticket and missed deadline since high school. He didn't look like a man who had just committed a felony. He looked like a man coming to collect his dividends. "Hey sis," he said, dropping a thick envelope on top of my active case file. "Sorry to barge in, but we need to tie up a few loose ends before the party on Saturday." I looked at the envelope, then at him. "What is this?" "Just the title transfer documents," he said, leaning against my doorframe, casual as a breeze. "Since the loan is approved and the funds are released, we need to sign the deed over to Mom and Dad. It's their gift. After all, it should be in their name." I stared at him, marveling at the sheer, unadulterated audacity. He wanted me to keep the debt, $110,000 plus interest, but sign away the asset. He wanted me to pay for the house, but give them the keys. It was the perfect distillation of our relationship. I carry the weight, they carry the prestige. "You want me to transfer the title," I repeated, keeping my voice flat. "You forged my signature to buy a property, and now you want me to legally sever my claim to it before I've even made the first payment? Oh come on, Rowan, don't start with the legal mumbo-jumbo," he scoffed, rolling his eyes. "It's a formality. The loan is in your name, because you have the credit score. The house is in their name, because it's their anniversary. That's how gifts work. You don't give someone a present and then keep the receipt." I leaned forward. "Brandon, do you understand what you've done? This isn't a family dispute, it's wire fraud, it's identity theft. I found Mom's thumbprint on the scan. I know she helped you." His smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before hardening into a sneer. "Mom helped because she knows you're difficult. She knew you'd make a scene if we asked, so we saved you the trouble. We did you a favor, really. You get to be the good daughter for once without having to be dragged into it." He pushed the envelope closer. "Just sign the papers, Rowan. Don't be a brat. If you don't, I'll have to tell everyone at the party that you tried to renege on Mom and Dad's gift. I'll tell them you're jealous of my success, that you're bitter because you're alone and miserable. You know how Mom talks. By the time we're done, nobody in this town will hire you to audit a lemonade stand." There it was, the threat, the leverage. He wasn't asking, he was extorting. He truly believed that my fear of public embarrassment outweighed my survival instinct. He thought he could bully me into financial ruin because he had been doing it for 3 decades. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized there was no saving him. There was no conversation that would make him understand empathy or consequences. He was a black hole, and if I didn't cut the tether, he would swallow me whole. I picked up the envelope. I didn't open it. I handed it back to him. "I'm not signing anything, Brandon." He snatched the envelope, his face flushing red. "You're going to regret this. You're going to ruin Saturday." "No," I said softly. "I'm not going to ruin Saturday. Saturday is going to be unforgettable." He stormed out, slamming the glass door so hard it rattled in the frame. He thought he had won. He thought he had intimidated me into silence. That I would show up at the party and play nice to avoid the fallout. He didn't know that I had already called Agent Miller at the FBI field office. He didn't know that the cabin warming wasn't going to be a celebration, it was going to be a sting operation. I turned back to my computer. I had one more email to send. I forwarded the final evidence packet to the federal prosecutor who had taken my call an hour ago. Subject: additional witness intimidation. Attachment: audio recording of office conversation. I had recorded every word. Saturday morning. The lakeside cabin was beautiful. I had to give Brandon credit. He had excellent taste when he was spending someone else's money. It was an A-frame masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a wraparound deck, and a driveway packed with luxury cars. My parents had invited everyone: aunts, uncles, business partners, the entire social circle they needed to impress. They called it a cabin warming. I called it a crime scene. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 10:55. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. No red eyes. No shaking hands. I looked like I was heading into a boardroom to deliver a liquidation notice. I grabbed the thick manila folder from the passenger seat. It was heavy, weighted down by 3 weeks of forensic tracking, metadata analysis, and the sworn affidavits I had filed with the FBI. I walked up the stone path. The front door was open, spilling laughter and the smell of expensive catering into the crisp morning air. My mother saw me first. She rushed over, a glass of mimosa in her hand, her face relaxing into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You came," she whispered, pulling me into a perfumed hug that felt like a vice. "Thank you, Rowan. Thank you for doing the right thing. I knew you'd calm down. Just smile, eat some quiche, and let your father have his day." I didn't hug her back. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered if she remembered the combination to the safe she had opened to sell me out. "I'm here, Mom," I said. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." She took that as surrender. She patted my cheek and fluttered away to greet the neighbors. I walked into the great room. Brandon was holding court by the stone fireplace, one arm around his wife Jessica, the other gesturing expansively as he recounted the story of finding this place. He looked the part of the successful son, the prodigal prince who had finally returned with the spoils. He saw me, and winked. A smug, victorious wink that said, "I told you so." He raised his glass. "Attention, everyone!" he boomed. The room quieted. "I want to make a toast. To Richard and Stacy. 40 years of marriage. You guys deserve this slice of paradise. And I'm just happy I could make it happen. To family! To family!" The room echoed. Glass clicked against glass. My father wiped a tear from his eye. My mother beamed, radiating the pride of a woman whose investment had finally paid off. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite, social ring. It was a firm, authoritative pound that rattled the heavy oak door. The room fell silent. My mother frowned, looking confused. Who could that be? "We're all here." I didn't move. I checked my watch. 11 o'clock on the dot. Agent Miller was punctual. Brandon set his glass down. "I'll get it. Probably just the caterers forgetting something." He walked to the door, swinging it open with the confidence of a man who owned the place. But it wasn't a caterer. Standing on the porch were 4 agents in windbreakers, emblazoned with 3 letters. FBI. Brandon froze. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a magic trick. "Brandon last name?" the lead agent asked. "Yes?" Brandon squeaked. "I'm Special Agent Miller. We have a federal warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and bank fraud. Step out of the house, please." The silence in the room wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the lungs of every guest. My mother dropped her mimosa. The glass shattered on the hardwood, champagne splashing onto her shoes, but she didn't flinch. She just stared at the door, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "What?" Brandon stammered, backing up. "This is a mistake. My sister, she knows about this. It's a family arrangement." "Rowan, tell them." He turned to me, his eyes wide and desperate. Every head in the room swiveled to follow his gaze. I was standing by the fireplace, the manila folder tucked under my arm. I didn't look shocked. I didn't look confused. I looked bored. I walked forward, the heels of my boots clicking rhythmically on the floor. I stopped in front of the agents. "Agent Miller," I said calmly. I have the supplementary evidence you requested, the metadata from the loan application, the IP logs confirming the location of the submission, and the audio recording of the witness intimidation that occurred in my office on Tuesday. I handed him the folder. Brandon stared at it. He recognized the envelope he had tried to force me to sign. Rowan? My father croaked, his voice trembling. What are you doing? I turned to my parents. I'm doing exactly what you taught me, Dad. I'm handling the finances. You did this? My mother shrieked, finding her voice. You called the FBI on your brother? On our anniversary? You stole my identity, Mom, I said, my voice slicing through her hysteria. I found your thumbprint on the scan of my social security card. I know you opened the safe. I know you gave him the documents. You didn't just let him rob me. You drove the getaway car. The agents moved in. They spun Brandon around. The click of the handcuffs was loud, mechanical, and final. Brandon started sobbing, a wet, pathetic sound. Mom, Dad, do something. She's lying. She's jealous. Miss, last name, Agent Miller said, looking at my mother. We'll need to speak with you as well regarding your involvement. We have probable cause to believe you facilitated the identity theft. My mother grabbed my father's arm to steady herself. Her social standing, her reputation, her perfect family narrative, it was all incinerating in real time. Rowan, please, she begged, switching tactics instantly. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. We can pay the loan back. We'll sell the cabin. Just make it stop. I looked around the room. I looked at the view of the lake. It really was a nice cabin. You can't sell the cabin, Mom, I said. I already called the bank's fraud department. The asset is frozen. This isn't a vacation home anymore. It's evidence. It's going to be seized by the federal government. I looked at Brandon, now cuffed and being led down the stairs of the porch he thought he owned. You wanted a legacy, Brandon? I called out. You got one. You're going to be a case study in forensic accounting classes for years. The agents led him to the unmarked SUV. The guests were motionless, terrified to move, terrified to be associated with the scene. My father slumped into a chair, head in his hands. My mother was weeping, not for her son, but for the humiliation. I checked my watch again. 11:15. Schedule kept. I didn't stay to comfort them. I didn't stay to explain myself to the aunts and uncles who were staring at me with a mixture of horror and awe. I walked out past the shattered champagne glass, past the frozen guests, and out the front door. As I walked to my car, I took a deep breath of the mountain air. It smelled like pine, lake water, and absolute, unconditional freedom. The fallout wasn't a singular event. It was a slow, grinding collapse. Brandon was denied bail at his arraignment, deemed a flight risk, because of the offshore accounts he had tried to open with my credentials. He is currently facing 3 federal counts of wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The plea deal on the table involves 5 years in federal prison and restitution that will take him the rest of his life to pay. My parents avoided charges. They pleaded ignorance, claiming they had no idea Brandon was using forged documents, despite the forensic evidence suggesting otherwise. The prosecutor decided that destroying their reputation was punishment enough. And it was destroyed. The country club memberships, the dinner parties, the standing in the community, it all evaporated the moment the handcuffs clicked. They are social pariahs now, living in a house they can barely afford, isolated by the shame of their own making. They called me once, 3 days after the arrest. My father left a voicemail asking if I would put up my apartment as collateral for Brandon's bond. I didn't call back. I blocked the number. I blocked the emails. I orphaned myself to save myself. 6 months have passed since that morning at the lake. The cabin was seized by the government as proceeds of crime. My credit report is clean again. The fraudulent loan erased like it never happened. But the real change isn't on a balance sheet. It's in the storefront I'm standing in right now. I used the money I had saved, the money they tried to steal, to open my own firm, Rowan Forensic Accounting. The sign on the door is etched glass, clean and sharp. I have 3 employees and a waiting list of clients who want to know the truth about their finances. For a long time, I thought justice was about punishment. I thought it was about seeing the people who hurt you suffer. And there is a certain satisfaction in that, I won't lie. But real justice? That isn't about burning down their house. It's about building your own. This is the justice of the sower. While they are stuck in legal battles and bankruptcy hearings, trapping themselves in the past they destroyed, I am planting seeds for a future they will never touch. I took the energy I used to waste on managing their chaos, on trying to buy their love, and I poured it into my own foundation. The best revenge wasn't the FBI raid. It wasn't the seized cabin. It was this morning, sitting in my own office, drinking coffee from a mug I bought, looking at a calendar filled with meetings I chose. I am not the bank anymore. I am not the fixer. I am the builder. Tonight, I will go home to my quiet apartment. I will make dinner for one. I will read a book. And the silence won't feel lonely. It will feel like peace. It will feel like the most expensive, luxurious thing I have ever owned. And the receipt has my name on it. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment you finally decided to choose yourself?